Hi, and welcome back to another episode of You're in Charge, Conversations That Spark Change. I'm your host, Glenn Pasch, and I am really excited today to have Blake Morgan join me. She is a customer experience futurist, and we're going to talk about that. But more importantly, why I brought Blake on is, as you know, the goal of this channel is to help people with aspects of their personal life or business life. And one of the things about business is customer experience. We focus a lot on the product, we focus on our service, and a lot of times I think we forget, that really what connects people to businesses is the experience they receive. Now, Blake is, as I said, business owner. She is the author of 2 books. One, More is More, phenomenal book, and now her newest book, which is Customer of the Future, which has been named one of the top 20 books that leaders, CEOs are reading to study the effects of COVID on business. So I just got that. I can't wait to dive in. She's also the host of the Modern Customer podcast, and she has a new podcast out, Be Your Own Boss, with her husband, Jacob Morgan. So I really appreciate your time. Excited to catch up. So thanks for joining me today.
Glenn, when you asked me to do this, I remember you so much from 13 years ago, maybe more, when I was producing conferences. So it's nice to be in a space where you know the people for even more years than you know your own husband. So I definitely was excited to talk with you. And I love the name of your podcast because I feel like life can feel so difficult, and to know that we are in charge, that we control our destiny, that mindset, what you do every day to uplift yourself really impacts your life. And I would say I'm a prime example of this, where I started from the bottom, now I'm here. I really did start with like no tools, nothing, and just through resourcefulness, curiosity, have been able to create a career and a life for myself that I really love. So thank you for having me. I look forward to getting into this with you today.
Yeah, and I love that. And I think that's a great place to start. It is the mindset, for all of us, be it our own personal life, taking that first step, or, and I love the word you just used, curiosity. I think people are curious. Sometimes fear comes up, but I think people who are in, your situation, my situation, we're running our own businesses, we have to be curious. We have to rely on a lot of others to help us through some of these situations. So for you, why focus? What spurred you on to focus so much on customer experience versus, say, sales or marketing or another aspect of business? What about that customer experience that really connected with you to drive your future in your business?
Experience is the one thing in business that's all about how we make people feel. And that really spoke to me at a very early age. And I was so lucky because I moved to New York. I thought, I'm done with California. I don't want to live with my parents. And I chased this dream, probably because I watched a lot of Sex and the City at the time. And I couldn't find a job. And I was recruited by this conference company. And they eventually put me in a department to launch a customer management online community to support their call center events, which is how I met you. Total fluke, fell into it. I guess they liked me because I was a hard worker. And in the beginning, it was essentially a telesales job. But I like to take whatever I have and just make the most of it. So every day I just took the job so seriously, and I loved it, and I was good at it because I loved, most of it was research, building relationships with people, and I really enjoyed that. And so I took something that didn't seem like such a great job, and I made something beautiful out of it, and I helped to eventually define an industry, which was, in the beginning, we didn't say customer experience. We didn't have that language really. We were talking about customer service, CRM, of course. But being so early in the game, I started to accrue all this knowledge because here I was flying around the country, running conferences, interviewing people for my podcast, which was called Customer Creation with Blake Landau. I probably had you on the podcast, and that was in 2009.
Yeah. That was a long time ago.
At a CRM conference, I met this gorgeous young guy who was in a suit that was too big for him and a backpack. And I had been in New York for 5 years, and I thought, I think I'm done with New York. It's a little too busy for me. And this guy, he is great. I like this guy. Getting older, and decided to, I fell in love with him, to be honest. So I moved to San Francisco to be with him. And that was almost 11 years ago. And I honestly, it's interesting because for 5 years, I did so well in my first job, which was that events industry. And then I really floundered. I got fired. I couldn't find my footing. I got laid off. But what I noticed is that customer service kept coming back to me. I tried marketing. I tried PR. I tried to be a social media consultant. And finally, I got recruited by a Fortune 100 company, which I wanted to work at this great brand, but in customer service as a program manager. I had an amazing boss, and eventually she was replaced by a guy who didn't really like me that much. We didn't have a good vibe. That vibe really matters between you and your boss. We didn't. And I got laid off. And all that time I had been still doing the content stuff because I loved it. I loved doing the Forbes column and speaking at conferences for free. My husband was already started his keynote speaking career, and I had a front seat ticket to that. So essentially, I got laid off, and my husband told me, you can't work for yourself and do what I do and not have a boss unless you speak and you start being brave and getting on stages. And I decided I never wanted to work for anyone ever again because I never wanted to feel so vulnerable that my destiny wasn't in my own hands. And that forced me to work on myself to become really brave. And honestly, Glenn, just today I saw my name on a website next to Simon Sinek's as a keynote alongside Simon Sinek. I used to be so nervous as a speaker, but the point of this story for your listeners is not that I fell in love, not that I moved across the country, not that I worked in customer service. It's that I simply kept following a curiosity and paying attention to what the market needed and also what I could provide. In addition, I stretched myself and I worked on myself every day to be a better person, be a better worker, more valuable. And here I am with you now.
No, but I really like that because it is there has to be a side of all of us to continue to work on ourselves. It's so easy to be discouraged, if you spend too much time on social media or listening to other people, because again, remember that life is curated. They're giving you the best. And even I, who know the game, still look at it sometimes and go, oh, I'm not doing enough. But what I liked about your story was, and I hope it resonates with the listeners is that all of those supposed setbacks, and they were a setback. You got laid off. You're not in the right position. A new boss comes in. If you continue to keep moving forward, eventually something, and you pay attention, something does unlock because you kept working on yourself. And again, you were blessed by your husband who can be honest with you. And that also is a key to have a group around you who will be honest, for him to say, you have to work on yourself. You have to get better at this. And I've seen it because I've followed your content for a long time. I go back and look at some of the early things I've done and I cringe. So I'm sure you look at some of the earlier things you have posted out online and go, oh, that's not really great. But now you look at what you're doing and you're standing on stages in front of thousands of people in total control because you're communicating a message that resonates with you. And as you said, you found your niche to where you provide value. And I think that's really key. So talking around that, was it an event that finally clicked for you, that you finally said, I'm in the right place? How did that moment start?
The change is not all of a sudden. It's very slow. The good things that happen, it's being recognized, my book by Business Insider. It's having my book called Top 100 Technology Books of All Time. It's like little things, technology books of all time by Book Authority. It's little things. But I think it's a mindset, again, because honestly, for years, I was taking my book more on the road, speaking about it. And half the people liked my speeches enough, and half, I would say, did not like my speaking, did not like how I showed up on stage, could tell I was nervous, could tell they were going to have to take care of me on stage. And I remember a few times I've gotten feedback that said, she's boring, she's monotone, lame content, like nothing new. And I cried. And I remember the day I closed my laptop, crawled up the stairs to my room, and cried and thought, I can't do this anymore. This is so painful. I'm in the wrong job.
Right.
But I got out of bed. I went onto YouTube. I started looking at other great speakers to get inspired. Glenn, just like you mentioned, you look at other people, what they're doing. I found a speech called Think Fast, Talk Smart by a guy named Matt Abrahams, and it had 24 million views. And I looked and I saw, oh, he teaches communications at Stanford. That's like an hour from me. And oh, he's a coach. He takes on clients. And I called him up and I said, I want you to teach me. I want you to coach me. And honestly, he didn't want to take me. He's like, oh, I have this like female colleague and she'll coach you. And I said, nope, I'm not doing it unless you coach me. And that was the beginning, I think, of real progress, because it started even when I met you 13 years ago. My boss had told me at IQBC, Blake, you're not a good interviewer. Every podcast, you're not doing a good job. You're boring. Go to Toastmasters. I became the president of New York Toastmasters. It forced me to get up. So what I do, and I think acquiring a certain amount of confidence and strength, you can look at the ugliness. You can say, oh yeah, I guess I was boring, or oh, I need to do a couple little things on stage to show more executive presence, whatever it is. Or I need to tell more stories. I need to get to the point faster, whatever it is. When you're strong enough and you have enough confidence, you're able to look at the negatives and get to work. So I worked with this coach. He helped me write a new speech. And it's constant working on myself. Even with this speech I just recorded for 20,000 people called $1 Million Roundtable, the one Simon Sinek's also a speaker at. I had to try out in front of 12 people. I did my whole speech for them as a run through. They said, Blake, great job. Here's what we think. This story is your first story. Get to it faster. Don't use this word. Don't use that word. And instead of saying, oh, I'm mad at you, I said, okay, no problem. And I work on myself. So I think it takes a certain amount of confidence to actually be okay with imperfection and to work on yourself. And I heard Esther Perel, who I love, she's a relationships expert. Her talks, she's such a giant now. And she says that confidence truly is being okay with your own flaws. So being on a stage in front of hundreds of people, surprisingly, it's not about being perfect, looking perfect, your weight, having the most beautiful voice. It's about being comfortable in your own skin. And I have to say the best moments on the stage are the moments where something goes wrong or I say something unexpected about the audience that's funny. It's not from being perfect.
Right. No, and I really admire that as someone who, listens, and sometimes I'm more critical. I think I'm harder on myself than other people would, so I do get their advice. But I remember speaking on stage was different. I was an actor for a while, but they gave you the words and you had someone who was directing you, where now it's your own speech or your own words. And I remember someone, when I was asking them for feedback, and I was worried, what if the audience doesn't like me? And his advice was very simple. He said, stop thinking about yourself. He says, your job, there's a reason you're there. You're educating the audience, or you're sharing something with the audience. Focus on the audience. Come out, and what are you trying to communicate to them? It gets you out of your head and you stop thinking of all of that. And I agree with you. It's the relationship you're building with the audience. It's the vulnerability of being comfortable with yourself, because things are going to mess up. But the more that you then go back, just like every athlete does, goes back and looks at tape. What worked, what didn't, what do I have to train on? And that's why they have coaches. So if you have someone who's constantly working on you, there are people who are naturally talented, but for most of us, we have to work at it and we have to practice it and we need someone to coach. So I think that's a phenomenal way for you. And I hope the audience takes that away too, is that there are people, if you can't afford a coach, I'm sure there's people that you can find, or there's YouTube. There's a lot of resources now available that weren't available 10, 15 years ago to help everyone get better.
Absolutely. Even if it's just repetition, the best speakers speak all the time. And I think that's what people don't realize. Even stand-up comedians, there's really not a lot of information about how to be a speaker, but stand-up comedy, I would say, is like the most parallel type of job. In what other venue are you standing up on a stage in front of a mic for upwards of 40 to 60 minutes by yourself, delivering a monologue? It's insane. And when you start to learn what even people like Seinfeld do, or Amy Schumer, who I like, to prepare for, let's say, like a Netflix special.
Right.
I mean, they're workshopping that thing every night in the East Village, at the Comedy Cellar, or Goth, like these little clubs. I mean, they are, and they will develop, it'll take them a year to develop 5 minutes of material. And it's incredible that they make it look so easy and natural, but there's an insane amount of preparation that goes into that I think you don't realize. And it's honestly a disservice because people just think, well, I should be able to just get up on stage and have this presence and wow an audience. And the truth is, it's a skill you learn, just like learning a new language, taking a cooking class. Everything, there is actually a formula to being a great speaker. It starts with a good set of tools, being likable, but the thing is, it is learned. There is a formula. And one thing that I wanted to say, that listening to you talk about, Glenn, your own, being critical of yourself, and the advice someone gave you, the truth is about an audience as well. If you like yourself and you feel comfortable in your own skin, like, everybody in the audience can relax, because there's nothing worse than being in an audience where you can tell the speaker is nervous, they're sweating, they have dry mouth, they're stuttering on their words, and the whole audience just feels like, I have to take care of this person. Oh my God, I'm worried. Are they okay?
Right.
They're not able to relax and learn something. So by liking yourself, but also working on yourself, you're giving the audience the gift of, I'm okay in my own skin. I can pause. I can be confident. I can stand proud in my stance and own the stage. That's actually a gift. I can slow down so people can understand what I'm saying. All of these things are so important if you want to be a speaker, but anyone can do it.
Well, everybody has potentially, because everyone has something to share. It's that confidence if they're willing to share. So let me put your business hat on now. And when we're talking about sharing our stories, that ties into, from a business standpoint, and what you focus on with customer experience is you're telling the story of the business, you're telling the story of the company, or you're sharing, how we would like to make you feel as a customer interacting with our business. So when someone calls you in, or you're working with a company or a client on this, how do you approach, if they're calling you, they think something's wrong. So how do you dissect what's intentional, or what they're hoping from an experience standpoint is happening, to what is actually happening? Like, what are the biggest pitfalls that companies are missing out there?
Yeah, I actually make most of my money from speaking. And it's interesting, people think I'm a consultant, and I'm really not. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I am brought in to, usually the keynote is the morning session, and to inspire people. And I don't do a lot of hardcore consulting. And I'm not sure why it's turned out that way, but I always tell people, what you're meant to be doing, that will find you. I am meant to inspire. I'm meant to be a storyteller. I am not meant to be an auditor sitting in an office somewhere looking through a bunch of call center metrics. That is not where I am best serving clients, and other people can do that much better, like Forrester, Gartner, Deloitte.
Right, but then for you but then what's the story you're inspiring? How are you connecting them to their customer? Because again, if you're talking to them about the value of customer
Right.
experience, right? What's that inspiring message that's making them go, "Oh, okay," and then off they
Yeah.
go?
So I I think what makes me different is that I don't try to sound smart. That might sound obnoxious, but I think so many business people that honestly don't do this job well is they
Hmm.
complicate things in order to sound erudite, and they end up losing their
Right.
audience. So I keep things very simple. And my message truly is if you make people's lives easier and better, you will always have customers. So, what does that mean? That means building experiences with customers at the center. Because most companies, if you think about being customer centric, in every decision they make, it's rare that it's made with the customer in mind. Very rare. Often companies do things that make it easier on their own company, make it harder on the
Hmm.
customer. That is how 90% of companies operate. It's a very simple thing. But that message really resonates. And the stories I tell are stories that I found or experienced firsthand just through my own curiosity. Like when I went up to Amazon and I spent time with the people there. When I interviewed the CTO of
Hmm.
Sephora and the surprising things he told me when I sat with him in his corner office in downtown San Francisco. Spotify. I talk about Spotify. Even in my keynotes recently, I'm dancing to music created by AI that's personalized. So it's not that I'm bringing anything honestly that new. I think it's just the way I say it and the delivery. People like that simple message, and that's what makes me unique is really just the stories I tell and the simple way I serve it up, because I feel like I've been doing this long enough where I don't need to convince people that I'm smart. I'm not even sure how
Right.
smart I actually am. If you had me do a math test with my brother who's visiting us, who's downstairs, he would probably do better. But I like the human experience. I'm a sensitive person. I pick up on things that other people don't. And I really try and deliver it in a way where a lot of people can understand. And that's what it's taken
Right.
many years to hone.
So then, so your newest book, right? So you've been doing this for a while. So
Yeah.
pre-COVID, middle of COVID, post-COVID. So what are you seeing or what do you think now has changed in the customer experience? What do businesses need to focus on once we've gotten back to or as we're heading into, let's call it back to some normalcy? What things did they have to deal with during COVID that you think you need to continue on, or just how has business changed
Yeah.
as we went through this whole
Yeah.
pandemic?
So during COVID, you're dealing with a frightened customer. Supply chain is a mess. So supply chain is slowed
Mm,
down. Your customer doesn't want to touch you, doesn't want to go into your store. Service people are not welcome in the home. Things get really complicated. And that provided
right.
a real impetus to change for businesses that had not gone through the digital transformation fast enough. So, how are we in every aspect, from employee experience to customer experience, solving traditional problems with technology? And that is digital transformation in a nutshell. And so that is not
Right.
going away, that companies now realize that they have to have a strong technology foundation, and customers do not want to go back to the way things were. So that was the wake up call of 2020, was how do we serve a contactless customer? Do we have the right technology to support our customers and to support our employees that we send home with their laptops? And so, like,
Right.
industries such as cloud, customer experience, I mean, huge growth in 2020. Very busy. My clients, a lot of them are these customer experience cloud providers and service providers. They
Hmm.
have never been busier, adding tons of jobs. because now more than ever, companies are realizing that all these technologies are critical in running the business, and they cannot go back to the way things were pre-COVID.
Yeah, we're finding that. So for my business, I have about 40 employees, and last March, we sent everyone home. We're in New Jersey, went on lockdown, and very similar to California, like
Right.
lockdown. And so everyone went home. But to your point, they all had their, laptops and they could work. But I found myself doing webinars for the team about how to work at home, because a lot of people didn't understand how to work at home, from finding a location in your apartment, your home, wherever it is, that you can say, this is my desk, and setting it up. And, the other thing was schedule, set it, whatever your schedule was at work, do it at home. I can't tell you how many times myself or the woman who was running the agency day to day would have to call people up and say, did you take a break? We would have to say, did you take lunch? Did you get outside? Because it was very easy for everyone just to continue to work. So to your point, it's not just the technology, it's how they're using it. It's their customer. They're disconnected from your culture, so to speak. But it's really important also because we've found on the good side, we're probably staying remote for a portion. People, we might change our workspace to be more a flex space where people can come in if they want, but it's okay. And we've been able to hire people outside, who don't live in New Jersey, where before you had to find your, group of people to work. Now we've hired, I think our last 5 or 6 hires have been not in New Jersey, and that gets us better talent. So to your point, businesses now have a whole new framework of how to deal with their employees and their customers. Very interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's great, Glenn. Congratulations that, you have grown this year, that you're still doing well. I think it's been such a hard time in that even just like basic things, you're right. Like, where do I work? I think a lot of people aren't very self-aware that, okay, whatever's in the background doesn't look good. Your lighting doesn't look good on a video. Your house is a mess. Your kids, maybe you can, it's hard. I mean, even with my own team, sometimes their little kids are on their lap in meetings. I have kids, so I mean, empathy is required at all times. Like I would like their focus, but I understand that this is very hard. And so just even working, like basic things have felt really hard this year. So I think that's great that you're trying to be helpful and understanding, like, what does it feel like to all of a sudden have your world turned upside down? And I think that's a great leader right there.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I always try to feel that if it's all right for me, it's all right for my staff. But same thing, both of my children had to be remote. They're home, so they're up on there. I actually had to rewire and get, hardline Ethernets run up to all the bedrooms because they had to sit there and have class. And it hasn't been easy for anyone, let alone my staff. But focusing on the customer, I think it's very interesting because some of my clients, I deal a lot with automotive dealers. You run this, they sold cars as best they could, contactless. And now that's elevated. One, to your point, a lot of them rush to get technology to do some of this because they didn't believe it. Oh, it's not going to happen. And then all of a sudden, I need it. But it's interesting how many of them can't wait to go back to the way it was.
Okay.
And I said, but you sold to people and they're going to expect that the next time they come back, and they expect it to be better than it was this time. So I think the smart ones are trying to find that middle ground of how do I prepare for a customer that wants to come into my business? And that could be restaurant, any retail. There are going to be people who want to go back in. Well, how do I deal with that? To your point, fears, whatever the rules are. But how am I going to serve a customer base that doesn't want to come in? And am I ready to do that as well? Or else you're going to lose because you can't just have one or the other.
Yeah.
right? Especially if you've built a retail business that you still have rent to pay and employees to pay and all of that. You know, if you've set yourself up as a brick and mortar, to flip all of a sudden to online is not the easiest thing in the world either.
Totally. We have a Tesla. We bought it online. There was no, fighting with the car salesman. Picked it up, left the lot. It was so easy. And I think Tesla has an advantage on a lot of other auto dealers because they realized early, a lot of customers don't like the process of buying a car when you go to a lot. The price is always changing. You got to haggle. Like I personally hate that experience. And between my husband and myself, I'm the confrontational one. So I would be the one, basically arguing with them about the price. I'm not going to lie about my personality. Everybody knows I'm a little feisty. And now that I know, like, if I keep with Tesla, I never have to do that again. That's great. And just the car is so brilliant. It's built by somebody who sat in the seat and went, oh, we don't need to brake. Like the Tesla, we don't brake. We don't use the brake pedal. That's weird.
Right.
So anyway, the whole experience is built by somebody who clearly saw this technology and thought, how can we make this better and easier? What do people hate about this car buying experience, and how can we create something that actually feels good? And they did it.
Yeah. And I think, and to your point, I think that's where hopefully 5 years from now, 6 years from now, that experience will change because there are a lot of people in automotive who don't like the haggling. I think the other thing about Tesla was that you had certain models and that's what you pay. That's the price. If you don't want it, okay. Versus, well, I want this piece from that to over here. But I think you see some dealerships moving to one price, but a lot of them are trying to embrace the technology. We work with them on that process. I work with them a lot on it is, how can we allow you and your husband to do as much as you want online, figure your payments, do all this stuff, submit it so that you could go to the dealership and basically just say, where's the car? Let me go test drive it. Done. I'm in and out in half an hour. Sign the papers. I'm out. Like if you could deliver that, everybody would love that. They go, great. This is no problem. But it is the haggle. And it's interesting watching an industry going through a change and who's embracing, who's fighting it, and the customers raising their hand saying, this is what I want. So to your point, I think that's really key for a business to understand that. So let me ask you one last thing, and then we'll jump into the questions to our little fun facts about you. Community is a word that's being thrown around a lot in business and marketing, and so when you're sharing and giving your message and inspiring these companies, is community, relying on that community of your customers to gauge, to understand, to get that feedback, how important is that for businesses to really actively listen to their customers / community?
Yeah, it's everything. I mean, that's what social media did. And it just started happening, I think, when we connected back in probably 2007, 2008. Social media started to really gain power. Customers all of a sudden had the ability to talk back. And the companies that embraced it did better, did well. Companies that put their head in the sand did not do well. So I think it's definitely a mindset, like we talked about earlier in the podcast. Do I embrace feedback? Whether you're a person trying to work on a speaking career or whether you're a business, do I embrace something that could be ugly? Because here's the hard thing for businesses about feedback. It can be negative. It can hurt. In addition, if you get negative feedback, you got to do something with it. You got to get off your couch and go get to work and start fixing it. And I think a lot of individuals are not quite incentivized to do that. And that's why there's this inertia to change. So there's definitely a mindset from a corporate perspective where the companies like Amazon jump up out of bed, excited to serve the customer, just like Jeff Bezos, and they welcome feedback. They're always trying to get it, and they know how rich data is in the process of improving what they do. So it's truly a mindset. Do I embrace that feedback, even though it could be painful, it could be expensive to have to change? And I give that to my engineers. I'm re-engineering our products differently based on the feedback, or do we not make it easy for customers to provide feedback? So it's truly the mindset.
Yeah, someone said it. I was interviewing someone the other day, and they were talking about buyer personas and this sense of community. And they said the businesses that fail, when you call me up as a customer to say this was my experience or I have feedback, if I spend time telling you why you're wrong or trying to resell you on what should have happened versus just listening to you, you lose.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, really, really, it's fascinating to me because I think customer experience is everything. I talk to my clients about it. I say, you have to basically say to yourself, when somebody's done business with you, how do you want them to feel? You mentioned that early on. And then what do I have to do? Reverse engineer, go backwards. Like, what do all my employees have to do? What processes have to be there? The interaction with my website, like all of it. But if you don't have that North Star, I don't believe you can force experience from the top down. You got to start with the customer and work backwards. I think that's really more important.
Absolutely.
So let's dive in. Thank you again, but I want to jump in here. I have a couple, I call them my, not hot seat questions, but it's more, let's answer a couple questions about Blake. So I'm going to ask you some questions. Don't overthink them. Jump right in. Number one, a book that impacted you in a positive manner.
Yeah, I just recently read Indistractable by Nir Eyal. He actually was on the podcast with myself and my husband. And it's all about the discipline of focus and how by multitasking, we're really degrading our lives. So when we are able to focus, everything in our lives gets so much better. So I would recommend that book to anybody, Indistractable, who wants to live a more pure and healthy life.
No, I'm going to read that because I have a running discussion with my wife and she says multitasking, and I'm not a believer. I don't believe you can multitask. I believe your focus, you can focus for a short time and then move to something else. But so I'm going to get that one. Okay. One thing that you have to do every day, part of a routine or a ritual to get your day started on the right foot.
Well, I have two. Can I give you two?
Absolutely.
Every morning I drink my coffee and I meditate, and I don't miss a day. 10 minutes every day, like clockwork, and it really clears the mind, and it's wonderful for stress reduction and overall feelings of joy and calmness.
Do you use an app or anything like that, like Headspace or something, or is it just
I
you're
did
meditating?
for like 8 years, and I really like Headspace, but I sort of felt like the guy who reads it, he does the same meditation every day, but he just does like a different food for thought before the meditation starts. And I realized that sometimes I don't want someone talking while I'm meditating. I just want like meditative music. And quickly, I went to Norway when I was pregnant in 2020, it was February, and it was very stressful to travel to Norway pregnant, beginning of the pandemic in February. Right. And I created this whole playlist. It's called Meditation Airplane because I listened on the airplane on Spotify. And it's all like Eastern music with bells and chimes. And I listened to that, and I put my timer on my iPhone for 10 minutes. Some people say you need more than 10 minutes. For me, that's all I can give. I don't want to do more than that. And it's usually enough.
Right. Great. Let's see now. What makes you laugh? Really belly
my
laugh?
Husband, Jacob. I'm a very serious woman, and it would only work with him. He is Russian. We're Russian Jews, but not like, his parents are from very hard circumstances in what was a communist Soviet Tbilisi, Georgia. And man, he is funny. He can do accents. His jokes. He knows me like no one else, and I just feel like my life would not be as rich without my husband, Jacob.
Well, that's a great thing. Guilty pleasure food.
Chocolate.
Okay. Movie or show that you always watch when you run across it on TV?
Yeah. Stand-up comedy. I love any kind of stand-up comedy. I love Tom Papa. Last time I was in New York, we met him. Always want to see Tom Papa stand up. My brother, we were just watching it last
I
night.
like
He's
him.
actually a big New Jersey guy. I read his book.
Oh, no, I know. He grew up in New Jersey. I like his comedy as well. Let's see. Favorite cartoon as a kid?
I don't, Simpsons, I guess. Everyone watched The Simpsons in the 80s. It was always
Okay.
on.
Let's see. How about things that you love to do or a skill you have that other people would not know?
Jeez. I hate when I do these rapid fire and people, you can tell they just want to get the perfect answer. And I'm like, just answer the question. I'm actually a pretty good cook. I like to eat. It's
There
all
you
related
go.
to experiential things. I like good food. And I'm trying to always be healthy. So I've really tried to get creative about spices, flavors. When you cook your
Right.
own food, it's much healthier than when you would buy it. So I know I have a lot of knowledge about basic cooking that I think is really valuable now, especially that I have a family.
Got to do that. Okay. I have two more questions. Your close circle of friends. Let's put your husband out
Yeah.
of the because you put him on a pedestal so far. Those who really know you. What's the one word they would use to describe you?
Caring. I'm very caring. I
Great.
care a lot
Love that.
for people. I don't have a lot of friends, but for the friends I have, I care deeply, and I'm a ride or die friend.
Good. I like that. I like that. So, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but the way I end the episodes are I want you, there's so much here and I appreciate all you shared. And for the people who are listening, I'm sure hopefully they're taking notes. But if there was one thing that you would hope the audience took away from our discussion today, what's the one thing that you would like them to walk away with?
Don't worry so much because COVID has been a pretty tough time. 2020 was a very hard year for everybody on the whole planet. And when really
Hmm.
bad things happen, it's a time to potentially hibernate, to reflect, to find meaning. But the truth is, the best stories that I have, the learning moments that I have, are not from when everything went well. It's from when things went terrible or there were curveballs. And my message to
Hmm.
all of you watching or listening is that it's all valuable. Even the stuff that feels so scary and so hard, you will learn from it, you will get stronger, and you'll be a better human being for it. So that is the message.
That is a great message and a great point to end on. So again, Blake, thank you so much for being here and being part of this. Where can folks find you on social media or connect with you if they'd
Yeah,
like
I would
to?
love to connect with anybody listening. BlakeMichelleMorgan.com, and there you'll find all my social accounts, and would love to say hi.
Great. Thank you so much. So again, everyone listening, thank you so much. And I appreciate it. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this out. There's so many people who could use the information that Blake just shared. So again, that's the point of the channel, helping other people. So as I say at the end of every episode, you're in charge, but now Blake gave you some new tools to help you become more successful. Thank you for your attention. Hope to hear you and see you on the next episode. Blake, thank you so much for being here. And I'm just so happy for all
Thank
of
you,
your
Glenn.
success.